Okay, so I believe we are live right now. Let me see.
Hello.
Let me just make sure. I see it on the timeline, but I don't see it like actually happening. Okay, yes, it's happening. Woo, we did it.
Yay. Happy fun times.
We're here. Welcome everybody. This is Adil, one of my best people. So welcome you guys. This is Unzipped episode 1. I'm super excited to be here. This has been kind of in the works for like a year and a half, 2 years, and I've just been kind of daydreaming about it and planning on making it happen and knowing it's a good idea. And finally, it's happening. So just so everyone knows a little bit about Zippy content, what we do is we represent authors, entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants. Everybody that I represent is in the online space who needs visibility, and we find them interviews on podcasts. So we've been doing this for about 2 years. Naturally, we've got a fantastic network of podcasters that we work with. It's going on 650 podcasters right now. So my whole plan with Unzipped is just to expose my network, unzip Zippy content and expose my network. So I'm super excited to have Adil on the show. We've been friends forever. He's been a part of the network since basically day one, since probably before Zippy was even Zippy. So Adil, thank you for being here. I'm so excited.
Thank you for having me, Courtney. I'm like so happy to be here. Wait, was I I think I'm like one of the first podcasters you had on
You are.
on thing. I want to say that I don't know who the first one is, but I'm claiming it. So
You know what?
unless
I will give you that. You can have that because seriously, you've been around since day one. I really think you might have been around since before Zippy content was actually a business. I think the first person I sent you was probably my dad when I was working for him just as his employee, I'm pretty sure. So it's like, this is like years we've been working together. So I'm so excited to have you as our first guest. This is awesome.
It's gonna be so much fun.
So,
I'm glad that
go ahead.
No, I was just saying I'm glad that I got invited to be here. I'm glad I'm the first one here as well. Whoop, 2 for 2.
So tell me and tell our audience a little bit about who you were before getting into the podcasting industry and kind of what prompted you to start a podcast. What made you think that was a good idea?
So my name's Adil Amarsi. Nice to meet you guys. So I've been a direct response copywriter and story seller, so like professionally since like 2008/2009. And it wasn't until about 2013, end of 2013, like mid 2013, that I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. The whole reason was because back then, I started doing an interview series with like so many different entrepreneurs. I was a 18/19-year-old when I started out, and by the time I was 21, I was interviewing experts, and almost immediately, actually very immediately, about 19, I was interviewing people. At 21, I decided to start making audio products and go the way of like asking the same questions. And anyone that's listened to my show, and Courtney, you've been on it, I don't do anything conventionally well. Like I'm if it's conventional, I can't do it well. If it's unconventional, it's my favorite thing in the world.
For sure.
So going through that, I had this whole idea back in 2013. I moved to Plymouth, UK for God knows what reason, but I decided to move down there. While I was there, I found at the time the online marketing industry was very much in the sense of what we like to call authority figures, like specifically guru authority figures, like I'm infallible, look at how great my life is, I've got everything. Whereas in real life, I knew a lot of these guys. They did have that, but they weren't the squeaky clean people that you knew. Right. I knew them like I was like, I know that guy. That guy's like such a weirdo. We get on great. He's like one of my best friends because I get to call the insults we throw at each other would get us banned on like so many different places. So I kind of got to that point where I was like, how do I stand out? Well, I know I'm going to find those same experts that everyone loves and interview them.
Yes.
I'm going to drag them to my level. I'm going to do it like it's two of us sat in a coffee shop, having a conversation, and anything goes. That conversation could go anywhere. And at the same time, I was a huge Joe Rogan fan. So I was listening to Joe's show, and that inspired me to kind of ditch the question format and just start talking. Right. At the very start of my show, like my first guest was Marshall Wayne, who was an amazing entrepreneur.
Yes, he is.
I love that guy. Such a great guy, and congratulations to him when he sees this, because expecting. one of the things I remember speaking to him about, and this still, it's been nearly 6 years, it's been 5 and a bit years, and I still remember this, that we had a whole conversation laughing about how he comes up with ideas for his videos is by binge watching TV shows. And we start joking about how that he would basically get dumped, sit in the shower, cry, have some popcorn on the side, some Netflix in the background. And that's how we generate ideas.
Yeah.
We just went back and forth for about 20 minutes about this. And the whole reason behind it was just I wanted people to see the authenticity of these people, because I want them to see the side that the public doesn't see. Like now it's gone the other way. Like everyone's trying to like, hey, look at my authentic side, my vulnerability. I was like, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that everyone's doing it. But I remember when I first started doing it, totally unheard of. And small confession, the name of my podcast initially was The Lifestyle Hero, which is a terrible name. I immediately changed it.
Yeah. I'm glad you made that change.
I changed that to Adil Amarsi Unplugged, because I couldn't really realize how I wanted to do it. And for a really long time, I was not cool with having my name out there. So I put my name out there and I was like, well, what is this show? It's me unplugged. I'm off the record. Yeah. Everyone's there. And it's like, this is just a fun show to have. And yeah, that's basically why I did it and how it's been.
I love it. Well, all the guests that we've sent you have just been, they love you. They're so excited when they're done with your show and they're recorded. I've had several people contact me that are like, that was the best interview. He's the best guy. I'm so excited. So yeah, definitely.
That's my third number one, by the way. That's 3 number ones right there. Thank you. I will take those.
Triple threat.
And right there. Triple A rated. The dumbest thing, the side note, just the dumbest thing that Courtney knows is it took me about 11 years to realize I have 3 A's in my name and I could use that as a marketing ploy.
Yeah, definitely.
I think when I told you, you sent me back the stupid look, as in to be like, seriously?
Come on, you're just figuring that out.
I didn't think about it that
outside perspective to put those things together. I get it.
Even marketing strategists and copywriters need that from time to time.
Yes, for sure. So tell us a little bit about some of the connections or things that have come from having a podcast. So partnerships, I mean, anything that might have come from being born out of the podcast.
So many. I've connected with entrepreneurs on such a deep level. Some people I thought I'd never get to speak to or even get to meet, and they become some of my closest friends. Joe Sugarman, the advertising legend himself that made the Blue Block sunglasses. For my birthday 2 years ago, after I interviewed him, he sent me 10 Batman credit cards that he had made back in the 70s or 60s that were amazing. He sent me 5 books that were all his, two copies of, what was it? I've got it up on my bookshelf. Let me just quickly find it. It's The 7 Forces of Success. He sent me 2 copies of that, 2 copies of Triggers, and 1 other copy of another book. All of them were signed, by the way.
Nice.
Sent me signed copies with "Happy Birthday, Adil, and may the Force be with you," because he knows I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So, the Force is be with you. So that was always fun. I've had one of my clients, Jen Scalia, who I love. Anyone that's not following me, go check her out. I think I've done around $100,000 of business with her. Like she's personally like, with her, I think I've done personally around like $30,000, and then 70,000 came from recommendations. People have come from and from that show. I've gone on stage with other places simply because of having a podcast. I've had sponsorships and interviews. Basically the nicest thing I can say about having a podcast, it's I've been able to get like not just joint ventures out of it, but like lifelong friendships of people that no money was exchanged, but they've just been really good people in my life that I can speak to now. Like you, for instance. Right. If it wasn't for my podcast, we would have never have met.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. Here comes my
Hey Charlie. Hey.
Say hi.
Hi.
What do you need to guys?
My tablet's going there.
Oh, did you unplug it? Yeah. Okay. All right, hold on. Give me 30 seconds. I'm going to be right back.
So while you do this, I'll continue. So like some of the other benefits, because there are a lot of benefits, some of the other benefits that have actually really come from me from podcasting, besides like relationships haven't been the biggest one, but I'd say like I've had free hosting from there. I get free tickets to certain events, which are really, really cool. I've had people reach out to me to actually say, hey, when you travel to my city, come stay at my place. Just got me free accommodation. I've been taken out to meals before.
Nice.
One of the weirdest ones that's happening lately is I've started to become seen by certain, like by a very small following of people that follow me, as being like a podcast expert. They're like, how do you do this? How do you get in contact with these people? I'm like, honestly, there's like 3 people that send me people, and anyone that I want to interview, I just message them like, hey
Yeah.
guys, I'd love to get you on my show. And by the way, here's my metrics. Sometimes I will say this much. Sometimes before I systemized my show, and this is one of the big mistakes I made, I never used to have it consistently. I used to record and never release for about 2 years. And like during that time period when I had a company come in, they would release 6 months worth of podcasts in a single day, which was so annoying. And eventually we retroactively fixed it. And now we're on a weekly consistent basis, which was powerful. And even that person that was introduced to me, I met them through my podcast as well. Like I interviewed them and they basically set it up. So
nice.
it's everywhere.
Nice. You sound like you're kind of in a tunnel right now for some reason.
That is very strange. I have
okay,
no
now
idea.
I'm good. That was weird.
Yeah.
I think it was just
that is weird. I haven't moved.
But you sounded fine up until that like little tidbit. But awesome. Yeah, definitely sounds like a lot of really great stuff has come from your podcast. So do you feel like having the podcast has kind of seeded your business outside of the podcast? Do you think it's kind of been like what have you noticed growth in your business because of it?
It's legitimate. Like, so I write ad copy for a living. So that's what I get paid to do, is actually get people to buy stuff. And the one downside of being a copywriter is that nearly everyone likes to say they are. And if you have the results, everyone loves to say that if you got the results, everyone's going to come to you. That's not true.
Yeah.
What's true is as long as you market yourself and put yourself out there, you'll get the results.
Yeah.
So for a really long time pre-podcast, even though I was really good at what I did, I had an amazing testimonial, like tons of money was made for my clients. Like up until I think when I started my podcast, I would have been 5 years in. I think I did about 200 million for my clients at that point in sales. Actually, or a little bit less. Actually, it was 150. I think 150, 200 million, give or take. So it's good.
50 million.
Give or take. Well, right now we're like, as of 2019 in March, I think I passed the 575 million mark. So kind of a good jump. But like at that time, it was really hard for me to get work. Even though I had these great results, it was really hard for me to get hired and get paid for what I did, which was the worst. The moment I had my podcast since then, that's eliminated a lot of the work, because what I do is with my episodes going out, it's the experts I have on there. And usually, as you know, with any good podcast, you have a little back and forth. And sometimes I get asked questions about copywriting on a show because my guest wants to know, and I start answering that question. And that just kind of like cements my position more so as an authority, because I can hang with them, but they can hang with me. So it's a back and forth.
Exactly.
And it has improved my overall business because, again, like I said prior, I was struggling to get clients. Now I'm getting to the point where I'm kind of really stepping into it. I'm getting clients come through the door. This is a side note. So one of my clients and one of my friends, Chase Hughes, who's amazing at human body language, I got invited to his high-level paid event in London simply because he was a friend, and I only met him because he was on my podcast. We had a great show together. He invited me to this thing. I only did one of the 3 days, so I'm going to go do the full 3-day event. Nice. But while I was at that event of like 50 people were being asked, oh, how did you come here? Like, who are you? What do you do? And I was like, hi, my name's Adil. Nice to meet you. We had Jordan Harbinger in the room, by the way. Jordan, who's a way bigger podcaster than I am.
Yeah, he's big.
But what's really funny was that people were still coming up to me and going, I heard your show with Chase and it was hilarious. We loved everything about it. I was like, oh, didn't you hear the one with Jordan? They're like, I did. It was a great show. But we also really loved the way that you handled, like, it was completely different sets of questions.
Yeah.
So being not even compared to that, but being like even mentioned in the same conversation, that's like a huge door opener for me. So it's impacted my copywriting business. It's impacted my courses that I actually sell. That's been there. And overall, it's helped me just everywhere. Like my podcast has literally helped me go everywhere.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Love it. This is exactly where I was hoping to go with this conversation. You're like covering all the parts, all the points I was hoping you would touch on. So I love it. It's awesome.
The reason why I'm number one.
Yeah,
I know
right.
what's gonna happen.
So just give the audience some pointers that you picked up in your personal experience. If they'd like to dive into the podcasting community for themselves, either on the owning their own podcast site or being a guest, is there anything you would recommend just in terms of getting a large return on their investment of time and money too?
Okay, so the first thing I'd say with anyone that's thinking about starting out their podcast, just get started.
Do it.
One of the most All right, there's a couple of things. I'm just like mentally trying to figure this out because the cool thing is Courtney asked me if she could send me the questions ahead of time. I was like, no, it's okay. I'll wing it because that's what my brain does. So this is one of those downsides. I'm like, man, I have so much things going on that I want to share them.
Yeah, take a minute, organize your thoughts a little bit.
The first thing I'd say is if you're thinking about being interviewed, not the interviewee, not the interviewer, but the person that's being interviewed, and you want to appear on other people's shows, go to Courtney. She has an amazing network. Go straight to her. That's not just a plug. That's just a thing that I know because I'm definitely going to be one of her people on there, and all the other fun stuff as well. Now, the upside is when you join Courtney, you actually get like a whole host of 650 people, and you might end up on my show as well, which is kind of cool. But if you're going to be interviewed, there's a couple of key things that you want to keep in mind. Figure out what type, listen to the podcast before you go on it. That's like a huge one for me. I really dislike it when I get guests that have never listened to my show, or at least I can't vibe with. That's the very first thing. You want to be easy. You want to be open. Don't be insulting. That's kind of like a really big one as well, because I've had a couple of guests in the past that have like, come on. And they were just so dry and wooden and stiff. And one of them was really insulting in the sense of they were like, I don't think you know what this is over in the UK. I was like, dude, most of my business in the US. So
oh my gosh, yeah.
We have to, like, you're younger than me. I'm slightly older than you by like 3 years. Come on. Right. So at that point, I was like, show up with a little level of humility, as I'd say, from the podcasting perspective, because you'll endear yourself to the podcaster. And they will promote the hell out of you, because here's a little secret that's very rarely known. Sometimes we don't publish episodes that we've actually recorded because we don't like you.
Yeah.
Why are we going to promote you if we don't like you?
Yep.
Not saying like ingratiate yourself to the actual, to the host. And what you'll find is they'll usually promote a lot of your business. To give you an idea, right now I'm sitting around 25 to 30,000 downloads a month. Which is great for me.
Yeah.
But like, who am I going to send out to that list? Someone I don't like or someone that I love?
Yeah. You got to be protective of those people. You know what I mean? You got to make sure that you're, keeping the.
Yeah. You got to keep growing. You can't have it. So just like you put the wrong person on and you see your numbers drop, and now all of a sudden that affects how everyone else does business with you. So if you're the interviewee, make sure you do your research, make sure you actually speak to them. Reach out to them, be like, hey, I'm going to be on your show real soon. Or they'll reach out to you and be like, hey, you're going to be on my show. Yeah, engage, get into it, because what you'll realize is it makes life a lot simpler for us. Also, be there for us when we need you, in the sense of like, if we send you, hey, I need your website URL, can we meet on whatever platform it is?
Yeah.
Unless you have a legitimate reason, like me personally, I don't like Zoom as much, which is why I don't do my interviews on Zoom, because for me, whenever I record, it's been unreliable. So I use Skype or something else. Okay. But this isn't my show. So this is Courtney's show. She's on Zoom. So I'll basically find a way to be on Zoom to be like, cool, let's make this work.
Be flexible,
but, yeah, you want to be flexible with what you can do and just basically help them out. If you have a biography, send it through if they ask for one. That's always a big one. I'm terrible for that kind of thing because I don't really like bios, writing my own bio, but I do have one. And make sure that gets sent out. Make sure you have a good headshot.
Very important.
The bigger, the better. Like I always go with square over rectangle. Like don't send a crappy photo. Send a 1400 by 1400 resolution photo with that's square, because it makes it so much easier for podcasters to actually upload that and get it approved by other companies, as well as their own websites that transfer it on their website as well. From the perspective of being a podcaster, a couple of things I definitely recommend is it's the best thing you can do to find out your voice. Like that is ultimately the best thing you can do, because you'll realize what type of person you are. Like I said, when I first started out podcasting, I was not even podcasting, when I first started interviewing, I was so ingrained in the whole, let me ask you the same 10 questions. And then I kind of threw that to the wind and I went with, what does this feel like? Who am I? I cuss a lot, by the way. I've been actively holding it back during this show because, we I will because I'm nice. It's not my show. If it was my show, I wouldn't care less because it's my show. But you want to kind of show who you are realistically. If you are a person that doesn't swear, don't swear on your podcast. Right. It's not who you are. Like you can even jokingly put that into the title, like the clean marketing channel. Mm-hmm. Like in fact, actually, anyone that is a clean marketer and they don't swear, please go ahead and get that as a domain, just like the Clean Marketer Podcast. Seriously. That's like gold right there.
Put it out there first and foremost.
Yeah. It just gets you right there. Now, the other thing is I'd say understand Apple's SEO service and how they basically do it, basically what they look for. I'm not the best person to ask this about, but there are experts out there that do know their stuff. Consistency, make sure you have a consistent schedule. So don't say that you're going to be releasing every single day. Just don't do that because unless you have oodles of cash stored away and you don't really do anything except for like you're an investor, you made a ton of money, now you're going to go down a venture, and you can spend a couple of hours a day just basically getting the podcast done. Don't do it that way. The way I do it is I release I batch record and I slow release over weeks at a time. I'm introducing a Monday show to my show, but that's not going to happen until after I move to my new apartment. So then I can batch record things. Other things, make sure you have 5 interviews or 5 audios already in the can, ready to go, because that covers 5 episodes, and that'll get you ingratiated with iTunes. They'll really love the fact that you've already got content ready to go. Make sure you own the domain for your podcast name if you can. Main reason is because you want to turn that into a lead generation. Just stick up a landing page and a thank you page. It's 2 pages, you're done. And that builds your mailing list so you can get more and more episodes. Other stuff that I'd recommend is don't be entirely married to your channel art. Like you can change that at any point. I've changed mine 3 times. I'm about to change it again for the 4th time. And it's just constantly updating what's there because, you want to basically create these things. Then afterwards that was it. Sorry, you want to make sure you focus more on audio quality more than anything else. Your audio quality is key.
Definitely.
Like for the last, like to give you guys an idea, I've stopped recording in the daytime right now because there's building works in my apartment and around my building. So I can't do podcasts in the daytime. So I usually do my podcasts around this time in the evening and try and record them then. The simple reason being, when I actually get on shows and release them, you hear the difference. You hear like a much more smoother tone, and people listen more when they can hear a smoother voice cut through the noise. Yeah. Also practice. The best thing you can do is actually be interested in who you're speaking to as an interviewer. Get to know them, understand what they are. And there is something that I'd always say to people I haven't done this, but it's kind of like goes without saying anyway. But I'd say do it from now on because it will help out. On your Calendly link or your scheduling link, please make sure you write down, please be ready 10 minutes before the show as I will be doing test calls. Mm-hmm. So you do a test recording, make sure your audio is okay, their audio is okay. I've lost interviews because I thought I recorded and it didn't, or it didn't pick up their microphone or my microphone.
Oh, man.
It's a whole pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So you want to have that in there. The other reason is because that 10 minutes beforehand, speak to your guest. Don't be like, hey, we're going to do a mic test. And all right, see you in 10 minutes. It's get on the phone with them for 10 minutes. Yeah. Build up that rapport before you get on. And then the moment you're like, hey, I'm about to hit record, they're like, cool, you've got energy to go. Like for me, I got told this 2 years ago, actually last year. A friend of mine was listening to my show. He goes, hey, Adil, the thing I love about your show and the thing I hate about your show is that your show starts off with, it seems like the energy builds as the show goes, but it goes, I would love for you to have that excitement at the start. So I was like, okay, cool. So whenever I speak to my guests, as I'm about to do the show, the introduction for me is like, hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Adil Amarsi Unplugged. I'm your host of the most, as always, Adil Amarsi, and then we jump right in. Yeah. So I introduce my guest. If you have a pre-recorded introduction and pre-recorded ending that you just basically put on and off, what I would suggest that you do is you do your sponsor call in the pre-recorded bit, and don't jump your, like, cut this part out of your podcast is, hey everybody, yeah, let's just whatever it is, because then it just seems like there's a break. So if your entire opening podcast was like, hey everybody, we're actually we got another guest today that, you know, it's Courtney from Zippy Content. She's absolutely amazing. We're gonna be doing X, Y, and Z. But before we do, we're actually sponsored by zippycontent.com, adilamarsi.com, and whatever the sponsors we have. And yeah, I think you guys get a lot out of this. Let's begin. Instead of going right into like, hey guys, it's so the very first thing I'd say to them is like, it flows right in. Yep. There's a lot of tips here, by the way, including like figure out how to do an ad commercial at the middle or at the start and at the end, but like slip it in. Don't be like, oh, hey, I've got, you know, blah, 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 whatever it is. Like, so blatantly, you want to kind of, the way I do it is I do it at the start, or I do it about 5 minutes into the show where I'm like, hey, just a real quick shout out to our sponsors for this episode. And my sponsor call is about 30 seconds because I don't do like, go here to read this. It's like, we're sponsored by these websites. Let's get right into it, because I'm more interested in what my guest has to say, because this has happened a lot of times where it's actually got to the point where I actually have an iPad with my Apple Pencil, which I got, where I basically sit down when I'm doing podcasts. I sometimes take notes because I'm picking stuff up from my client, from my interviewee, the person I'm interviewing. I'm just like, wow, that's incredible. Say it, like, just write it down. It's incredible. So like, those are the things that are there. When it comes down to promotion,
that's what I was going to ask you. I'm glad you're getting to that, because I wanted to ask you what you recommend just in terms of marketing the episodes and everything like that. So
there's a lot of ways to do it. So I'm starting to build my own promotional kind of wheel of things that I want to do. And it's still rudimental right now, but it's like, it's getting there. So it's actually taking a blend of having it on Apple, having it on Stitcher, having it on Spotify, Google Play Store, where I basically submit it to as many places as possible.
All the streaming platforms you can get it on.
Exactly. There is a service that you can use. I think it's called repurpose.io. What they do is, for a very small fee, I think it's like $12 a month or something, you literally get to take your shows and they basically turn them into videos for you.
Nice.
And that's like a whole different stream of traffic that comes to your website and keeps you consistency with YouTube. I have a very sneaky promotional thing, which I'm going to reveal here for the first time. I don't really talk about this. So what I do is I have a mailing list. So what I do is I have my guests mail their list and their audience a link to my website, because I always put my podcast on my website, adilamarsi.com/podcast. You guys can go check that out. But what I also do is I get my interviewee, I get them to actually mail that link to their list. On that same page, it says, hey, if you want to listen to more episodes, opt in here. Nice. I collect names and email addresses from that.
Perfect.
So now, let's say I've got 1,000 people arrive and only 100 people opt in. I have 100 dedicated people I can mail it out to. So when I interview Courtney and I'm like, hey, Courtney, could you mail your list? She'll mail her 100, or like her 1,000 people my way. And I'll collect maybe another 100. Now I have 200. But here's the difference. When I'm mailing the original 100, I'm actually sending them the iTunes link, not the podcast link to my website. The reason being, Apple sees 100 new people show up and then sees more people show up, and that increases its stats, which basically helps you with your promotion, and it works out. Another way of doing this is you can buy really cheap Facebook ads, like really simple, where you just take snippets of your show and just basically put it on and just say, listen to the rest of the episode here. You're probably paying maybe $5 at most per cost per mile, if less, so CPM. And you don't want to spend too much money. You want to just spend a little bit of money. And what that does is starts to bring more people on board. It starts to incrementally build. And that's basically how you do it. So you have your email list, you have free streaming platforms, and you have paid ads with Facebook as a way to combine everything together. And the real cool thing about it is, on YouTube, you can build up your subscriber base, which allows you to create more videos. And in your videos, you can promote the podcast. In your podcast, you promote your YouTube channel and actually have the
So
two
they just
cross
trickle
promote.
down and fuel each other, and it turns into a machine.
Perpetual motion. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's
Talk
that's
about
some
value.
that's one of the ways that I do it. The other is, and this is kind of like a really fun one that I haven't yet tested, but I'm about to test later this year. And that is actually taking out a goodness, what's it called? There's certain podcasts that are in the same industry as you that will take on sponsorship money.
Oh,
So
interesting.
what you do is you reach out to them and say, hey, do you mind doing a sponsor call for me at the start of your show? And they'll be like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. And you obviously you can pay them, and then they basically promote it out for you.
Nice. That's awesome.
And if you can, especially with influencers, I can't remember what website it was, but years ago, there was a website where you could actually go and find out how much a influencer charges to do a promotion for you. I think you'd be surprised at how cheap some of these places are. Like, well, I say cheap, it's like a one-time promotion, but like Paris Hilton at the time was like $10,000 for a single tweet. I was like, a single tweet from Paris to something that you're doing that's related to what she does is a lot of money if you play it right.
Yeah.
So look at Fire Festival. They spent thousands. It was 75 millions. They said they were charging $75,000 a ticket, and they sold out. I'm like, you only paid 250,000. You paid $250,000 for one person to like post out there about you.
Wow.
And if you look at the math, that's 4 sales, and you've made your money back.
Yeah.
Right. So, and they made way more off of that. So the way I'd look at it is I'd look at an influencer, and what I would do is I'd say, hey, can I get you on my show first? And then you can promote that to your list.
Yeah.
Like, so it's a paid promotion, but I'm getting them on my show now because now I've got them in 2 ways. One, they're endorsing me by being on my show, and 2, they're endorsing me by actually promoting my show.
Yes. Very smart.
And get on other people's shows as much as possible. Like, that's another big one.
Yeah, definitely. But something I'm noticing is that a lot of people are kind of double dipping into both sides of the industry, and they have a podcast and they're being a guest on other shows and turning it into its own just self-perpetuating machine. You know what I mean?
Oh, entirely. It's one of the reasons why, again, I'm one of your clients, because I'm going to be on the other side as well, like putting my stuff out there.
Be double dipping, exactly.
Yeah, I'm right.
Exactly. So, awesome. This has been fantastic. So, last question: just tell everybody where they can connect with you, where they can learn more about you, how they can work with you.
So easiest way, if you want to be a guest on my show, is you contact Courtney, and you basically get that way through me. You can also listen to previous episodes on adilamarsi.com/podcast, or just visit the website as we're rebuilding and launching it. You can also check out my YouTube channel, which is adilamarsi.com/YouTube. That's easy way to work with, like, all those. If you want to work with me from a copywriting perspective, can't even speak words. If you want to work with me privately, send me a private message and just tell me that you saw it from Courtney, so we can sort something out, and I'll actually pay attention, because you'd be surprised how many emails get through that I'm like, wait, who is this? I don't know who they are. And it just ends up in spam. Sometimes I read them because they're hilarious and they're just spam bots. But if you mention Courtney, it puts you directly into my main inbox, and I'll be able to reply back to you. Bar that, I would also suggest, basically, I don't know, thank Courtney. She's awesome. Like, she's absolutely good at this kind of thing.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for being our first guest, and for just packing this whole interview full of such valuable information, and for being so amazing.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Have a good one.